구원해준 나의 천사 나의 세상 난 이상 새 고향이 널 만나러
Jimin was standing in front of Wayan in the corridor of their university. Wayan was looking down, not daring to look up at her boyfriend. Her lips twitched, wanting to smile, but she held herself back. She had to act, and she was a bad actor. Jimin had a rolled sheet of paper in his hand. Her answer paper. He was studying it against his palm, his cold stare fixed on Wayan. 45? Jimin asked, his eyes never leaving hers. That's all you could score? His voice cut sharply, and Wayan felt like she stopped breathing the moment she heard it. Her eyes fluttered, trying to look up, and when she did, she instantly looked back down. He was mad, angry now. You were watching web series all night, and this is what you scored? He said, stepping closer. Wayan blinked, trying not to look scared, but her body reacted automatically. You scored well in other subjects. Why not in organic chemistry? He asked. Wayan swallowed hard, wetting her dry throat before she spoke. I don't like it. She didn't even need to look up to know. Jimin was coughing as he stepped even closer. I don't like what I'm hearing, he said, and she gulped down again. Stop it, Wayan. Her heart thudded. You aren't going anywhere and you aren't watching anything, he said firmly. Wayan finally looked up. Jimin was already holding her wrist, tight, firm, dragging her toward his bike. She suppressed her smile, but when he turned back toward her, she quickly lowered her head again, ready for whatever came next. Jimin opened his dome, and Wyatt stepped inside the familiar space. He led her to his study table. He sat on one chair, and Wyatt took the other. Can't believe, he muttered. Wyatt suppressed her smile for the nth time today, setting her books down. Now do what I say, he ordered, opening the book harshly. Wyan gulped, taking her notebook. The common tertiary, what mechanism happens? SN1 or SN2? Jimin asked. Wyan blinked, thinking hard, even though she already knew the answer. He scoffed before speaking. You're wasting time thinking. It's SN1, always. Wyan nodded quickly, writing it down in her notes. She was a pharmacy major and Jimin was a chemistry student. He was famous for his top scores, and she was good too, but her heart wanted something else. She wanted her boyfriend, his attention, his closeness, more and more of him. That was why she purposefully failed. So she could have him closer, and her plan was working exactly as she wanted. Every second with him felt like victory. Shall we go to that Tokyo trip if I score more in the next exam? Wayan asked. Jimin slammed the pen down on the table. You pass the exam next time and I will think about it, he said firmly. Actually, I can read it the exam next week, she added quickly. Jimin looked up, studying her face carefully. I said I'll think about it, he said at last. Wayan smiled to herself, silently promising she would score more than 90 this time. Tell me honestly, does this make sense to anyone? Because to me, it's just hieroglyphs scribbled on paper, Wayan said, putting her bed down. Jimin leaned back in his chair. It makes sense to people who actually study, he replied. Symbols don't stay meaningless unless you refuse to learn them. Draw butane. Now, how many ways can you rearrange the atoms without breaking the formula? Jimin asked. Wayan tried, but she made it wrong. He leaned over when she struggled, muttering coldly. Not like that. You don't even see the symmetry, do you? His breath brushed her neck, and she was going insane. She slightly turned, her face just inches from his. Then, teach me, she whispered, her puppy eyes wide. Jimin blinked, then took her pen, writing neatly in her notebook. His arm touched hers. She smiled to herself. Got it? He asked, and Wyan nodded. Jimin shook his head before asking again. Tell me the difference between an alcohol and a ketone. If you can't even recognize the functional groups, you'll never survive this class. Wyan groaned, dropping her head on the desk. Just carve this into stone tablets and put me in a museum already. I'll never get it. Jimin looked over at her, placing a harsh hand on her shoulder, and made her sit straight. Stop being dramatic. This isn't ancient history, it's chemistry, and you're failing it. He scribbled two curved arrows on her notebook. Which is stronger, HCl or HF? You don't need to memorize, just look at the electronegativity and stability. He studied her face and tapped the table impatiently when she stayed quiet. I don't know, ask them itself, she muttered, turning away. She knew Jimin would touch her again, and that was exactly what she wanted. He pulled her chair closer and turned her toward him. Are you really not interested in this? He asked. Her eyes studied in his face. His eyes, his nose, his lips. Slowly she nodded yes. Then look here and follow me, he said. Electrons don't fly wherever you want. They move to stabilize. Think. She nodded again. He grabbed her pen and began writing the notes for her. Organic chemistry is in magic. It's rules. Follow them and it's easy. Ignore them and you fail. Wyan nodded once more, her eyes drifting to his side profile. His beak popped slightly as he focused on the notes. When he looked up, she quickly turned back to the notebook, only to glance at him again. Now draw the resonance structures for benzyl carbocation, he said, handing the pen back. She blinked, pointed the pen to the paper, and messed it up again. Jimin groaned, snatching the pen and smacking it against her head. Stupid, he muttered, drawing it correctly himself. She rubbed her head, pouting as she looked at him. Rank the acidity, he said next. Wyan blinked but gave no answer. Jimin stared, not believing what he was seeing. Really don't know? He asked. Wyan glanced back at him. She knew, but she didn't expect him to be this cold. Predict the product when true bromobutane reacts with NOH, Jimin said. Wyan took the pen and wrote it down, wrong again, on purpose. Jimin sighed and grabbed her arm tightly. What are you even doing? You want to fail again? I swear, I'd like to have a talk with your dad tomorrow. You aren't doing anything good, he said, his voice sharp. Wayne looked at him. She thought she was just joking around, messing up to spend more time with him, but his harsh words strained her heart. She yanked his hand off her arm before writing the answer, the correct one. Jimin looked up at her paper. She quickly wrote down all the right answers to the previous questions he had asked. His lips parted as he stared, speechless. Once she finished, she slammed the pen down on the table. I'll not fail again, she said, pushing her chair back to stand. But he quickly grabbed her wrist, pulling her back down into the seat. She was already tearing up, trying to turn away.